give you more knuckle.
Hello guys, and welcome to If Life Were an Anime. Today I want to start with the question, what separates an adult from someone who hasn't fully matured? At least when it comes to mental maturity, is usually the ability to take responsibility for yourself, for who you are, where you're going, for the results of your decisions. But this is becoming more and more rare. Often society, through its endless drive for consumerism, pushes the idea that it's okay to float through life without taking ownership of who we are. Often economic circumstances also put us in a difficult situation. Difficult choices must be made. Are you going to university? If so, what are you going to study? Is it profitable? Are you taking a job? Where? How much does it pay? Are you getting married? Is she pretty? How many kids are you gonna have? Jump 50 years into the future, you're on your deathbed, wondering, when did I ever make a decision that was truly my own? I love underdogs and losers, outcasts, rebels. Emil Cioran, the Romanian philosopher, used to have a special liking for losers. He thought that the life of a so-called loser was way more interesting than the life of a successful person. As a story, getting your dream job, your perfect wife, the house on the nice part of the city, etc., seems as awfully boring events. But having a business that failed, a relationship that didn't end well, a serious regret, a problem that took out the best out of you and left you bleeding on your knees, he thought that all of these events were way more interesting. He thought that they made a better story. He thought that even in failure, you can fail spectacularly. And I think Gambling Apocalypse, Kaiji, perfectly represents this idea. In the manga and anime Kaiji, you have the main character Kaiji Ito, who moves to Japan after graduating from high school. Unable to find a job and frustrated with society at large, Kaiji spends his days gambling, vandalizing cars and drinking booze. 2 years later, and his life is no better. Kaiji is, in society's eyes, a complete loser. A debt collector named Endo arrives to collect money owed to him that Kaiji had to co-sign for a friend. The friend disappeared and didn't pay up the debt. Then the debt collector offers two choices to Kaiji: spend 10 years paying off his loan, or board a gambling cruise called Espoir for one night to repay his debt and possibly make a lot of money. By accepting a bigger loan and try to pay back through gambling in one night. Espoir is that French word for hope, quite a fitting name, because clinging to hope will be Kaiji's ultimate reason for his most difficult loss. But the trick is that Endo fully knows Kaiji's type. He has had to deal with this type of people all of his life. The eternal adolescent, unable to take responsibility, unable to improve his situation, unable to apply discipline and rationality to his own life. He knows this type of person is bound for failure, because they are their own worst enemy. Endo has no expectation for Kaiji to ever make it out of the cruise ship, and that's the whole point of offering him this chance, of giving him hope. Surprisingly, through a lot of hardship, Kaiji does make it out of the ship, and to an even more difficult gamble, which at the end he manages to win. So at this point in the story, he has enough money to pay his debt and keep something for himself. But it is here that Kaiji gets greedy. He has beaten every game, he has outsmarted his opponents by even risking his own life many times, but he thinks he can do it one more time against the person who is responsible for all of his pain, the chairman of the corporation who sets up these inhumane games, Kazutaka Hyodo, a sadistic, old, cruel man with no seemingly redeeming quality except maybe a liking for gambling and a respect for people who can outsmart him. Kaiji offers a final gamble to Hyodo. Hyodo accepts with the condition that, additionally to the money being gambled, Kaiji will have to risk 4 fingers of his right hand, and if he loses, they will be chopped off right there. Hyodo is a sadist, and for him money alone does not offer enough excitement. Kaiji accepts, confident that he will plan a game to trick Hyodo, a lottery type game. They will fill a tissue box with tickets and they will take turns drawing a ticket. Whoever picks the winning ticket from the box first wins. Hyodo, a cunning man, knows Kaiji will try to cheat, but accepts because he is also confident he can outsmart Kaiji. And here is where the most interesting scene in all of the Kaiji series happens. Kaiji could have walked away with his winning, paid off his debt, and had some decent amount left, but it wasn't enough for him. Reminds me of a guy called the Dogecoin millionaire recently who was on the news, who was a guy who risked everything. He asked for a loan and used his savings and invested in Dogecoin during the crypto surge. So the cryptocurrency skyrocketed for a time and he ended up with around $3 million in earnings. But at the peak of the price, he decided not to sell against the advice of basically everybody. He believed this random result was due to his ability in recognizing a good investment instead of a lucky and rare occurrence due to factors that are beyond anyone's control. Long story short, he ended up not selling and the currency dropped in value, leaving him with only $50,000 from the $3 million. Pride precedes the fall. Now let's go back to Kaiji. Hyodo and Kaiji put the winning ticket together inside the box to assure no one will cheat, but Hyodo at the last moment folds the ticket inside the box to ensure he would be able to differentiate it from the rest when it's his turn to pick. He also correctly assumes since Kaiji prepped the game, Kaiji must have prepared a second winning ticket inside the box, and since he was first to draw, he on purpose ignores the winning folded ticket. He also correctly deduces the trick and finds the second winning ticket hidden by Kaiji and presses it into a tiny ball so Kaiji cannot find it among all the tickets. He then draws a losing ticket on purpose, ignoring the winning ticket, and gives Kaiji his chance to draw while grinning. He wants to test Kaiji's resolve and intelligence. When it's Kaiji's turn to draw, he tries to find the second hidden ticket at the sides of the box, but he fails to find it since he already took it and hid it, as we mentioned before. At this point, Kaiji panics and fear takes control. The prospect of being enslaved, losing his money and his fingers on top of that, turns him into jelly, unable to think, to assess the situation that is happening in front of him. The only thing he's able to do is turn to despair, and he starts praying for God to save him. He begs, like a son begs to his mother, yet God does not descend from heaven with a solution. He clings to hope and randomly grabs a ticket, hoping Lady Luck and God himself will save him one more time. Unfortunately for Kaiji, God was nowhere to be found, and he draws a losing ticket. Hyodo laughs mockingly with a devilish laughter. he puts his hand in the box and draws the winning ticket. Then says to Kaiji that he could have drawn the winning ticket in his first try, but wanted to give Kaiji a chance to see if he could come up with a solution. But Kaiji failed the test. Hyodo tells Kaiji the reason. The reason why Hyodo doesn't lose any bets is because he doesn't rely on luck to win. A king, he says, creates his own luck. The implication being a king trusts himself to find a solution and make his own decisions. A king doesn't turn to external sources of salvation, nor he hopes for rescue from somewhere else other than his own self. To be a king means to take full responsibility for yourself. To turn inwards when everyone else is turning to the outside for solutions. This is what separates kings from ordinary men. After accepting his defeat, they bring out the guillotine to cut off his fingers. Kaiji at first tries almost to beg not to go through with it, but he clearly sees Hyodo is not the type of man that will ever be moved by emotion or tears. Kaiji now knows he has to face the music. He made his bed and now has to lie in it. And mustering up all of his courage, and while tears flood his face, he finally accepts that he put himself in this position. His choices took him to this point, and now he must endure his punishment. There is always something heroic in seeing someone enduring suffering with a firm determination.
No. It's too late. I already lost. Nothing can come from disgracing myself further. Even if he is at fault, this bastard never forgives anyone. I should know that. Wake up! Don't even think about begging. Endure the pain. Stand tall. I will get through the pain of losing my fingers. I will!
I do want to point out here that in the manga, Nobuyuki Fukumuto, the mangaka, has a beautiful style. Whenever he decides to portray characters going through a difficult emotional situation, he tells us about the inner condition of the character visually by drawing the character's eyes with squiggly lines around their head or their vision, or with an undulating wavy background, almost like the famous Edvard Munch painting, The Scream, where all of reality seems to be affected by the emotions of the character. And this is beautiful to appreciate in the manga and also in the anime, and it's a very elegant way of telling us how the character is feeling without the usual dialogue or description. It shows the mangaka handles a basic comprehension of what makes good storytelling. And one basic principle of storytelling is show, don't tell.
I never ran from anything because I didn't have nobody to go to. I've always had that, where I'm going. Home to get me. Ain't nobody there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so I've always been in a situation where I'm forced to deal with it myself, so.
After they cut off his fingers, they are kind enough to send him on a limo to the hospital. And now, the adrenaline rush having subsided, the pain and regret remaining, Kaiji is calm enough to realize something that will change the rest of his life forever. He recalls Hyodo's words when he mentioned he could have picked the winning ticket in his first try, but wanted to give Kaiji a chance to win. And he is able from this to deduce everything that happened. He realized that if instead of panicking when he couldn't find the ticket he had hidden. If in that moment he had remained cool and applied the same logic he is applying now, he could have figured out the trick of Hyodo. In fact, Hyodo hinted to him that this was possible. But in that moment of truth, when pressure was piling up on him and fear was inundating his soul, he chose to trust a higher power. He didn't trust himself enough to make a decision on his own. His whole life had been a mix between bad decisions, blaming others, blaming circumstances, and in that moment he couldn't muster the courage to trust in himself. He turned to God, to desperation and fear, to someone else to save him. But when did God ever answer any of his prayers before? When did God ever intervene to save him? He should have trusted himself, and he could have had it all. It was right there, if only he had trusted himself. And this lesson broke me. I was Kaiji. I was the guy who didn't trust himself, who in times of hardship turned to a silent God, to something external, to luck, to the advice of others, never making my own decisions, too afraid to be wrong. But what I learned, the lesson that I kept from this was, to face life by yourself is the great adventure, is what life was made for. And from that moment on, I never asked for advice again. I realized that making my own decisions was the most valuable tool for happiness and self-growth. Because even if I was wrong, the mistake was all mine, and it did not feel bad at all after all had happened. There wasn't a feeling of guilt or blame for not having listened to myself. But in the past, if I did something after asking for advice, if the thing turned out badly, I would usually blame myself and others for letting myself be influenced by their comments, even when they were honestly trying to be helpful. Because at the end of the day, they didn't have my vision. My vision was purely mine, and my decision should have been mine 100%. This was my life, not theirs. This is the only way to face life without regrets, to embrace facing difficult choices by yourself, by your own set of values, by making the resolution that whenever an important choice needs to be made or a problem needs to be faced, you will do it on your own first, that you will face the possibility of failure. And we need failure to gauge our capacity, to tell us who we are. Everybody can keep it together in success, but failure exposes you to yourself. Embrace it, because in truth lies freedom, and there is nothing more honest than failure. You can get successful completely out of merits that were not your own. Maybe because you were born with a certain family history, a certain economic situation, a certain look. But failure is fully your own making, and it exists to help us see what we are made of. Kaiji would learn this too, and with this lesson in mind, he would be sent off to an underground construction site to pay up his debt by working as a slave for decades to come. But in that darkness, a tiny light of hope would be given to him, and now he had to figure out how to use it to his advantage. The scars on his right hand, the permanent reminder to always trust yourself and let go of the vain hope that the gods will save you. In fact, if there are any gods, they have given us already the tools we need for our salvation. Neither the gods or your parents or your bank account or your wife or your children, none of them can walk the walk. I highly recommend both the manga and anime of Kaiji and all the works by the mangaka Fukumuto. I think his works are filled with great insight and the telling of everyday lives of regular people facing adversity and learning from their mistakes. I love how he portrays characters that are in appearance losers that don't have a lot of things going on for them, but how their story progresses and what they manage to take from their failures is what really makes them interesting. So thank you for listening, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Take care.